Let me hit with you the truth right out of the gate. People, they don't remember your pitch. They remember how you made them feel. So, you know, they don't really care that you're number one in your market. They don't care that you're number one in your office. They don't care how many homes you've sold. They don't care how many listings you have. You know what? They care about one thing. Can you help them feel safe making the biggest decision of their life? And if you want them to feel that way, you better learn how to tell a pretty damn good story. So let me tell you why storytelling matters. Facts tell, stories sell. Our human brain, it's wired for connection. It's not really wired for information. So think about it. When was the last time someone cried over a market update? Probably never. But the story of a single mom who bought her first home, where their kid's sleeping on her shoulder at the closing, sucking on the binky, dropping its bottle. Doesn't that just fucking punch you right in the heart? So storytelling, it bridges that credibility gap. It takes you from just another agent to that trusted guide, to someone that people can rely on. People, they don't want a salesperson. They don't want you to fucking sell them. Nobody does. You don't like to be sold. I don't like to be sold. What they want is they want a Sherpa up the mountain. They want somebody to take you and guide you the right way so you don't get hurt. So stop trying to impress and start trying to connect. There's 3 essential stories every agent must master. I mean, these are critical to your career, and believe me, they are going to help you so much. If you're serious about standing out, then you need these 3 stories in your arsenal. First one, the client hero. This isn't your success story. This is their victory. Tell the story of the client who was nervous, overwhelmed and skeptical, and walk them through how you helped them. The story isn't about your expertise. It's about their transformation from being worried, being scared, to feeling confident and feeling comfortable. You want to use these techniques in listing appointments, in buyer consultations, objection handling. Let me tell you about a couple just like you who thought they'd never get approved. That hits harder than any stat. So the why I go into stories: stop being a transaction robot. Start being human. Why are you in real estate? What's your real mission? What's the scar, the wound, or that purpose behind your hustle? People want to work with agents who truly give a damn about them. So tell the story that proves you do. You can use this in, Instagram lives and open houses, your about me section, for recruiting agents. Here's a story. I got into this business after my mom lost her home, and I swore I would never let that happen to anyone else under my watch. Now your clients they're going to remember this. It's unforgettable. You could also be the community champion. That's a third story. You want to be more than a transaction. Tell the story of your roots, of your town, of your tribe, your people. Tell stories about helping local business owners and neighbors and teachers and vets. Be the agent who knows the people, not just the zip code. Use this in social media content, listing videos, monthly newsletters. Imagine this. The Johnsons weren't just selling a house. They were leaving the home built after 32 years, and I helped them do it with dignity and ease. You think people are going to forget that? Hell no. People forget what you say, they remember how you make them feel. So let's talk about how to tell stories that stick, that really make an impact. So let's break it down. There are 4 elements to telling a story that actually connects. The first element is a hook. You don't start with a timeline, you start with a punch. You know, they had 3 weeks to move across the country and no idea how to sell their home. Now people are listening, you know. So you got them, you hooked them. The second is heart. You know, what were the stakes? What were the pain? You know, what was the risk they were taking us? Make us feel that. They were grieving. Her husband had passed 2 months earlier. The sale wasn't business. It was just closure for them. How does that hit you? Right? Third, you have to be the help. This is where you show up not as the hero, but as the guide, that Sherpa we talked about. You know, what did you do? What did you teach them? How did you fight for them? Here's that story. I negotiated a cash offer in 48 hours, but more importantly, I sat with her on her porch while she cried. Wow, I'm about ready to cry. No. And 4, the hope. You have to give them hope. How did it end? What changed and what was the transformation? Sarah walked into her new home with peace in her heart and her husband's photo in her hand. Don't tell stories to show off. Tell stories to show up. You know, here's some common mistakes that agents make. You know, let's be real. Most of us are doing this wrong. You know, we talk about ourselves way too much. We flood people with data, not emotion. We try to close and not connect. You know, and the videos, they're templated trash with elevated music and no soul. So cut the fluff, tell the truth, be real, be raw, and be remembered. They'll remember you if you make them feel it. You know, the power you already have, you don't need better scripts. What you need are better stories. You don't need to be louder. You need to be realer, if that's even a word. Every listing, every buyer, every heartbreak, every triumph, you already have the gold. You just haven't been using it, so fucking use it. You know, if you want to stand out in a market full of noise, you better become a storyteller that people can trust. Because the best agents, you know, there aren't just professionals. They're messengers of hope. You know, and that, my friend, is what people buy. People buy an emotion, and then they rationalize with logic. Remember that. So don't just close deals, tell stories that close hearts. And that's how you build a brand that lasts. Peace.